Welcome back to the 7th IMSC. The fourth panel session is titled Looking Ahead, Maritime Security and Cooperation in the Asia Pacific. Our moderator for the finale is Professor Jeffrey Till, advisor to the Maritime Security Program at RSIS. Co-moderating this panel is Rear Admiral Aaron Beng, Chief of Navy, Republic of Singapore Navy. The speakers for this session are Admiral Michael Gilday, Chief of Naval Operations, United States Navy. Admiral Pierre Bondier, Chief of Staff, French Navy. Admiral Yamamura Hiroshi, Chief of Self-Defense Force. These panelists will be speaking from Singapore. Admiral Tan Sri Muhammad Reza, Chief of Navy, Royal Malaysian Navy, will be speaking virtually. May we now invite Professor Till to open the panel. Sir, please.
Okay. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us in this fourth and last session of the IMSC 2021. Our brief is to focus on the future of maritime cooperation. As discussed in previous sessions, this has in part to be framed by our assumptions about the future of COVID, whether that will make us more ready to cooperate or not. So the issue is really what we should be cooperating about and what are the prospects that our very distinguished speakers foresee. And bearing in mind their very high level of responsibility, maybe how they plan to deal with them. I'll briefly introduce all four speakers before they speak. First, I'd like to introduce Admiral Michael Gilday, 32nd Chief of Naval Operations for the US Navy. As you would expect of someone at this appointment, is a culmination of a long, varied and impressive career of command at sea, which included the Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group, senior positions in the cyber world, in the Pacific, in NATO, and probably the most arduous of all, especially at the moment, in Washington. Secondly, Admiral Pierre Bondier is an aviator who flew the Super Étendard and the Rafale, eventually ending in command of the Charles de Gaulle during the Afghanistan campaign. Experience in Africa and Iraq. The Admiral took over as Chief of the Naval Staff of the Marine Nationale in September 2020. Thirdly, Admiral Hiroshi Yamamura took over as Chief of Staff of the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force in 2019. The Admiral comes from the Yamaguchi Prefecture, for long an area closely associated with maritime endeavour. As a surface warfare officer, he served mainly in the Fleet Escort Force before becoming Vice Chief of Staff in 2016 and then Chief in 2019. Last, but by no means least, Admiral Mohammed Reza assumed command of the 17th Chief of the Royal Malaysian Navy in November 2018. That means he wins as running his Navy the longest of the four this afternoon. Again, he is commanded at sea and had a long series of previous naval and joint appointments. He studied abroad at the NDU in Pakistan, and like Admiral Yamamura at the US Naval War College, Newport. To start the ball rolling, I would like to invite Admiral Gilday to start, please. Over to you, Admiral.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Dr. Till, for that kind introduction, and thank you for your many years of advancing the art and the science of maritime strategy. It is truly an honor to participate in this year's International Maritime Security Conference, and I'd like to begin by expressing my deep gratitude to the government of Singapore, the Singaporean Navy, as well as the men and the women, those invisible hands, who helped facilitate this event. Without your efforts, we would not have participated in such rich and productive dialogues here. Thank you all. These are unprecedented times, and you overcame substantial challenges to make this week happen. Rear Admiral Bang, congratulations to you and your team on bringing us together in this incredible city. With so many countries bordering all the world's oceans represented in this audience and virtually, I must compliment you for hosting what is truly a global event. Thank you for your leadership and thank you for your hospitality. It has come through in every single aspect of this great forum. The United States and Singapore are more than just military partners. We're close friends, we're strategic partners, and we collaborate closely every single day. Our relationship is deep and enduring, and I look forward to continue and strengthen the bonds among our two countries and our two navies. We gather here this week along the world's busiest maritime corridor, a waterway that advances progress, strengthens cooperation, and fosters the resilience of mankind. And we come together now in need of all three: progress, cooperation, and resilience. For it is the only way that we will navigate the challenges and harness the opportunities in our time. For thousands of years, we have used the world's oceans to expand the reach of human civilization, harness natural resources, and establish trade routes for the flow of wealth, culture, and ideas across the globe. And in the wake of the Second World War, a free and open system emerged that has generated shared security and prosperity across the world. This order has brought about 76 years of great power peace and served as a rising tide, lifting billions across the world to a better life. Indeed, this free and open order floats on seawater, and seawater, more than anything else, has been the medium for our prosperity, powering more than 90% of our trade and 95% of our digital information. The scale and the scope of our dependence on the seas continues to grow. From the movement of raw and refined products around the world, to mining and fishing, to energy generation and our expanding digital infrastructure, the seas are lifting every nation to new heights. Those of us in naval uniform see it with our own eyes every day. Over the past 25 years, global waterways have become more congested, with maritime traffic increasing by a magnitude of 4. On the seabed, transoceanic cables carry nearly all of our digital information, and new tools and techniques are making undersea resources even more accessible. Advancements in artificial intelligence, machine learning, 5G networks, and many other technologies are reshaping our communities, our economies, and our future. Indeed, we have reached a point of unprecedented progress, unbounded perception, and unlimited potential. But at the same time, we remain exposed to a host of challenges, including the COVID-19 pandemic, sea level rise, terrorism, violent extremism, and proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. Additionally, excessive maritime claims are subverting recognized boundaries. Violations of economic exclusion zones are robbing nations of their resources. Illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing is depleting the world's oceans of protein. And malign activities at sea are escalating tensions abroad. We make today will have a dramatic impact on our collective future. This decade is critical. As I look back at our wake and reflect on the direction of maritime security in the new normal, I am convinced that now more than ever, cooperation is the key aspect to our modern understanding and application of sea power. Cooperation allows us to prosper from the sea and welcomes every nation to take advantage of what the seas have to offer them, not just a select few. It ensures that our most vital economic and social resource, Seawater is shared sustainably and shared responsibly. Cooperation recognizes the interconnectedness that we all share. What transpires here near the Strait of Malacca and along all the coastlines, tributaries, and sea lanes of the world affects the health and the security and the prosperity of. Importantly, cooperation, when applied with naval power, promotes freedom and peace and prevents coercion, intimidation, and aggression. After all, cooperation breeds trust, and that is something that you cannot surge. Safe and secure seas begin with safe and secure international order, and naval cooperation here in the Asia Pacific and across the globe sets the conditions for this order to thrive. Over the last 8 decades, sailors from around the world have shouldered the responsibility of maintaining the rules-based order and patrolled the lonely frontiers far from home to uphold the conditions that sustain it. Many of us gathered here today have shared in this sacrifice, and we, like those that came before us, understand that a strong coalition of maritime nations is needed not only to support a common set of rules to govern life at sea. That's why the United States Navy is operating in lockstep with so many of you. I would say indeed all of you, from the Black Sea to the Arabian Gulf, from the Arctic to the Indo-Pacific. We are steaming, flying, and operating together to keep the peace, to safeguard opportunity, and to preserve the freedom of the seas. We see this in practice across the world's oceans every day, with multilateral discussions combining training and education opportunities and a host of senior leader conferences like this one, with a host of multilateral exercises like Pacific Vanguard, Talisman Sabre, RIMPAC, and Komodo, with Task Force Sentinel working to secure the passage of commerce in and around Southwest Asia, with the Enforcement Coordination Cell supporting the United Nations to denuclearize Korean Peninsula through sanctions enforcement, and with bold steps towards the ever greater interoperability and interchangeability across the globe, underscored, I think, by the recent integration of international naval forces with the French ship Charles de Gaulle and Her Majesty's ship Queen Elizabeth. All of these strengthen our ability to respond to any challenge and highlight the importance of our Navy-to-Navy partnerships, because at the end of the day, we all have a role to play. For our part, the United States Navy stands ready to deliver naval power any place, any day, and at any time. We reject behavior that undermines the legitimacy of the free and open order. This is contrary to what we stand for: the rule of law, freedom of navigation, and freedom of the seas. Earlier this year, our nation's Sea Service released a new tri-service maritime strategy called Advantage at Sea. In it, we prioritize our most pressing concerns, recognize how new and converging technologies are shaping the security environment, and emphasize the need for cooperation with an ever-expanding orbit of allies and partners. We remain laser-focused on operating, sustaining, and maintaining a ready Navy to demonstrate our global reach, enforce common principles, and sustain the conditions that enable shared prosperity. Readiness translates into deterrence, into economic security, and signals the strength of our collective resolve. Meanwhile, we are evolving our fleet commander's ability to employ large distributed force elements. Later this summer, we'll conduct the biggest U.S. Navy exercise in a generation with Large-Scale Exercise 2021, spanning 17 time zones. Approximately 25,000 sailors and Marines on both sides of the Pacific and the Atlantic Oceans will leverage the integrated power of our sensors, our weapons, and our platforms across all domains. We are also moving to adopt innovative capabilities much more deeply into our fleet. Through autonomy, robust networking, artificial intelligence, directed energy, and weapons of increasing range and speed, we are sighted on delivering a lethal, survivable hybrid fleet of manned and unmanned platforms. This hybrid fleet will operate from seabed to space and from the littorals to the open ocean. We will combine our sailors' exceptional capabilities with our allies and our partners to generate an unprecedented naval force that will deter conflict, that will bolster diplomacy, preserve security, and, if called upon, be ready to respond to crisis or to quickly end hostilities. We are aiming high along with you. Our strategic direction, I believe, is strong, and we are accelerating the development of a modernized, integrated, all-domain naval force for the future. I'll close with this. The challenges ahead may loom large, but I am confident, very confident, in our collective ability to face them together. And because of that, I'm filled with optimism, with strength, and with conviction. Through continued engagement and integration, we will ensure free and open access in every waterway and the many benefits that flow along with it. Our relationships are unwavering, and the United States Navy is committed to maintaining a steady course of naval cooperation and growing the connections among our nations. Without a doubt, our greatest strength lies in unity. I would again like to express my appreciation to the people and to the government of Singapore for welcoming us in your nation this week, and to your local community for hosting American ships and sailors over the years. Thank you, and I look forward to this afternoon's discussion.
Thank you very much indeed, Admiral. Good stuff. I like the phrase unprecedented times, especially, and also ending with strength and unity. Good phrases, I think. Our next speaker is Admiral Vendier from France. So, Admiral, when you're ready, please take the mic.
Dear Admiral Beng, dear Chief of Navies, Admirals, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I would like to thank especially Rear Admiral Aaron and valuable event in such a challenging context, as Admiral Gide said. Our discussion here focuses on what we have to do in order to know and understand each other, cooperate, and ultimately deliver maritime security, the theme of our session. It's an important contribution towards security. I will first tell you why, as a head of Navy, this subject seems to me particularly important in the present strategic context. I will then outline the lines of action that I believe are necessary to achieve the desired end state of stability and maritime security in the Indo-Pacific region. First for all, why are we discussing maritime security? Why is maritime security in the Asia-Pacific a critical issue for our world? I think we have entered in a new geopolitical cycle, and that this cycle is shaped by the maritime. Why is it so? Grand territorial conquests seems to be a thing of the past, and open aggressions between great powers is supposed to be prevented by nuclear deterrence. This limits violence to sub-threshold encounters or gray zone warfare, with the inherent risks of miscalculation this entails. To compete, the states pursue their aims in the global commons, which have become the true battlefields of these sub-threshold encounters, where actions are often difficult to attribute. For the global commons, I mean sea, outer space, and cyberspace. They all have similar properties. These spaces are mostly open. Technology plays a decisive role and is often dual use, and attribution is very difficult. Within these common spaces, the oceans, and indeed the navies, occupy a special place because they also operate in the other global commons of space and cyberspace. A combat navy is obviously maritime in its nature, but we must not forget that nuclear-tipped ballistic missiles that use space to ensure a permanent nuclear deterrence posture are launched from submarines, and that the navies make extensive use of satellites to communicate, navigate, and guide their weapons. Moreover, warships are becoming increasingly reliant on digital technologies that are both capable of acting in cyber domain and becoming victims of cyber attacks. Thus, the sea is a privileged place for strategic competition. The proliferation of surface vessels, submarines, and naval weapons is the clearest and most worrying illustration of this. Moreover, the tensions at sea that we are witnessing in the Indo-Pacific, the weakening of multilateralism and the international order, and certain obstacles to the freedom of navigation seems likely to pose real risks into the stability of this region and consequently to the entire world. You will all know that France is an Indo-Pacific nation. 1.6 million French people live in the Indo-Pacific. France has a EEZ, more than 10 million square kilometers, 3/4 of which lie in the Indo-Pacific. We have approximately 7,000 military personnel from across all 3 military services stationed here in the area. We deploy ships from continental France to the region several times a year, and this year that includes a submarine. We have commercial interests throughout the region, and we have developed military partnerships with many nations. France has developed a strategy for the Indo-Pacific since 2018, which the French president updated last week during the France-Oceania Summit. At this occasion, he announced that France would undertake a massive re-engagement in the Pacific Islands region. France's defense strategy was also unveiled in 2019 by Minister for Armed Forces, Madame Parly, in Singapore here during the last Shangri-La dialogue, during which the aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle and its battle group called in Singapore. As a French sailor, I'm therefore very interested in maritime security of the region. It's a part of the mission set of the French Navy. I assume you are equally or more even concerned by this issue, as the stability of the Indo-Pacific area is vital for the entire world. This region is key for the global economy. The strong, even vital this in the rest of the world have established with this region will make it the foremost geopolitical area for decades to come. We also note that the region has become the focal point for global tensions in much the same way as Central Europe was during the Cold War in the Middle East, and the Middle East was during the War on Terror. This is likely to continue for a few years at least. If you look back at history, there is nothing new. The Indian and Pacific Oceans have long been at the epicenter of international relations. Now, my second part. Since maritime security is crucial to the security of the world, what can we do to strengthen it? First, I believe we must talk to each other, and it's what we are doing today, to share our visions and establish a common grammar. This is nothing new, but it's sometimes useful to repeat it. Regular exchanges, sharing the strategic visions of the actors in the area, and the acquisition of a common grammar, that is to say, a set of rules of behavior, are necessary for the stability of the region. For speakers of European languages, the word grammar refers to a structure that allows us to understand each other, even if we do not use the same words. I know some other languages put less emphasis on grammar. However, it's essential to live in peace between nations and be able to assure each other that we understand one another well, especially when it comes to rules and limits. It was exactly the discussion we had in the precedent panel. This common grammar makes it possible to prevent escalations, to avoid miscalculations. It's a powerful factor of security. In that sense, the CUES, codes for unplanned encounters at sea, is a good tool to prevent incidents. Therefore, we must acquire a common global picture. That's why Singapore Navy does today. This is what France is trying to do. Last month, France took over the presidency of the Indian Ocean Naval Symposium, a unique forum that brings together almost all the nations bordering the Indian Ocean, with the addition of welcome observers countries. France is also a member of the Western Pacific Naval Symposium. The ASEAN Defense Ministers Meeting Plus, ADMM Plus, and the Regional Cooperation Agreement on combating piracy and armed robbery against ships in Asia, RECAP, are also effective platforms where France is ready to bring its own experience and expertise. After adopting a strategy for the Indo-Pacific in 2018, which includes regular military deployments, as I said, France welcomes other European countries' efforts to increase their naval presence in the area. In next January 2022, France will take EU presidency and intends to push forward the EU Indo-Pac strategy. France, therefore, wants to promote an approach that is as multilateral as possible, and it is in this spirit that it is developing cooperation and partnership with many nations in the region. Partnerships are excellent tools of stabilization and security reassurance. During its regular naval deployments across the region, from French territories in the Indian and Pacific Oceans or from continental France, the French Navy makes every effort to promote bilateral or multilateral missions and exercises. Since January, France has already deployed 7 ships in Asia Pacific, including LHDs, submarines, and frigates. Our naval deployments are predictable and executed in accordance of UNCLOS. They don't aim at rising tensions in the regions, but defend the rule-based order and promote freedom of navigation over flight. This contributes to the development of a common security culture, to mutual knowledge, to the improvement of our tactics and procedures, and to the strengthening of friendships between our sailors. These partnerships create cohesion between our navies. Exercises at sea make our force more credible. They require equipment capable of operating together. Technical developments make interoperability increasingly difficult to maintain, where they are not designed from the beginning to be compatible with our partner system. And it's a question of strategy too. Partnerships make it more complex for potential troublemakers to hinder freedom of navigation at sea, create fait accompli situations, threaten the balance of the region, the natural resources of oceans or maritime or land areas in the Indo-Pacific region. This multilateral approach and these strategic partnerships should not make us forget that many challenges concern us all. Climate change and the threats it entails concern all countries. Extreme climatic events, melting glaciers, warming, changes in currents and salinity, rising sea levels, not to mention the excessive exploitation of natural resources and marine life, the pollution of oceans, the reduction of biodiversity, will sooner or later lead to instabilities that will affect. On these topics, on first, HCDR capabilities and training with international exercises, as we do in New Caledonia, in French Polynesia. It's also the case for IONS in 2022, where an exercise will be conducted off the coast of India in March. Second, about illegal fishing, France supports the establishment of the Code of Conduct in the South China Sea and develop extensive tools to monitor it through its huge EEZ in the Pacific area. These issues present us common challenges which can promote our union beyond the differences in our cultures, our political systems, our own values, on our economic differences. Climate, biodiversity, and the oceans were also at the heart of the France Oceania Summit during the last week. Furthermore, economic globalization has produced a deep dependence on maritime trade in all of countries. The need for the free circulation of commodities and consumer goods must lead us to always prefer dialogue and maritime security to competition and confrontation. This is what France is trying to do by enhancing maritime domain awareness and information sharing between countries in different areas of the globe to ensure safety of sailors and surveillance of illegal activities. This is the case in the Indo-Pacific region, where French Navy officers have been assigned to the information fusion centers in India, Madagascar, and Singapore since the very first day of their inception. To conclude, I hope we will continue to make progress collectively on the path to cooperation between nations bordering the Indo-Pacific first and foremost, without excluding those from the rest of the world. They are also concerned by the same issues as we are. I hope that we will always seek peaceful solutions for managing disputes at sea. We must be firm in our commitment to freedom of movement at sea, but also exemplary in our respect for international law, the fight against climate change, and the preservation of the environment. We must be firm and virtuous to stop the spiral of tensions and uninhibited competition that threatens us. But virtue only works if it's a shared value. We want to work on this with all actors in the Indo-Pacific and beyond. I thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Admiral. Thank you. Another good talk with lots for us, lots to think about, particularly making the analogy, I think, a good one, the advantages of talking in order to establish a common operational picture. It's a useful phrase. Our next speaker is Admiral Yamamura from Japan. So when you're ready, Admiral, if you could take the podium.
Admiral Ben, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to meet you all today. I am Admiral Yamamura, Chief of Staff, the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force, JMSDF. I'm honored to have this opportunity to deliver a speech here in Singapore today. I'll talk about how Japan views the Indo-Pacific region and the JMSDF's effort for the peace and stability in the region under COVID-19 using slide. Next, please. The government of Japan advocates free and open Indo-Pacific vision as an overarching and comprehensive foreign policy in order to deal with the challenge in the vast area of Indo-Pacific region. The importance of the Pacific and the Indian Oceans has been dramatically increasing in not only economic aspects, but also security ones. In addition to maritime resources, seabed minerals and hydrocarbons, there are huge quantities of proved and probable oil reserves in the East China Sea and South China Sea. Plus, there spreads important slots for maritime trade. More than half of the world's merchant fleet tonnage passes from the Western Pacific to the Indian Sea. Also, the Indian Ocean is one of the most significant slots in the world, which connects Asia to Africa through the Middle East. To protect our significant slots, Japan advocates the vision of free and open Indo-Pacific and is eager to spread the vision to the world and steadily obtain approval and cooperation from our like-minded countries. Next. Free and open Indo-Pacific vision aims to create a place that values freedom, the rule of law, and market economy, being free from force or coercion. Free and open Indo-Pacific vision shows our strong determination that we will maintain and develop a free and open maritime order. By doing so, the Indo-Pacific region can be a global commons and prosperity to all countries in the world without discrimination. Next. This slide shows JMSDF's efforts, which is divided into 4 lines of efforts: personnel, function, concept, and cooperation. In the line of cooperation, JMSDF cooperates with an allied and partner navies. This is the key to realize the free and open Pacific, I think. Next. もっといいのか。はい。This slide shows our current international cooperation under COVID-19. Navies have various strengths in cooperation with other countries. Naval ships can easily deploy overseas, get together, and conduct exercise in the ocean all over the world. These to conduct international cooperation to realize a free and open Indo-Pacific vision, Indo-Pacific, even under COVID-19. Let me explain some of these activities. First activity is counter-piracy operation mission and information gathering activity. JMSDF has continued these activities under the multinational task force in the Gulf of Aden despite COVID-19. There has been difficulties for the JMSDF to send assets to destroyer and to P3C to the Gulf of Aden, but thanks to the support of the friend countries such as Singapore, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, United States, we have been continuing our operation without break. Second one is bilateral or multilateral exercises. This effort is very important because it maintains and develops not only naval relationship, but also national. From this perspective, we try to deploy our ships in various regions and conduct joint exercises with friend and partner navies. In 2020, we conducted bilateral exercises 57 times and multilateral exercises 14 times. In addition to joint exercise, we held Asia-Pacific Naval College Seminar online and participated in IONS to keep alignment with other navies. Next. Next, I'll talk about our Indo-Pacific deployment, IPD 2020, from September to October last year. The dispatched units consisted of 2 destroyers, JS Kaga, JS Ikazuchi, and the submarine, JS Shoryu. The ships left their home ports in early September, and after confirming their non-infection with the COVID-19, it takes 2 weeks, they departed the seas near Japan. In IPD 2020, we visited only 2 countries, Sri Lanka and Vietnam, and they supported us to refuel. But we conducted bilateral exercises with Australia, India, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, and the United States in the South China Sea and Indian Ocean. Next. This slide shows the image of our deployment this year, IPD 2021. To maintain the rules-based maritime order, it is important to conduct a number of joint exercises and demonstrate a presence. From this perspective, the JMSF is working to deploy our ships in as many as possible and actively make exercise opportunities with other navies. So far this year, we conducted the bilateral exercises 19 times and multilateral exercise 10 times. Also, JMSF training squadron have made port calls in Brunei, Sri Lanka, Malaysia, Indonesia, and the Philippines. I really appreciate such support. The coverage of our activities this year is shown in the screen. We continue our counter-piracy operation in the Gulf of Aden and information gathering activity in the Middle East. Also, we plan to deploy our training squadron and IPD force this year to cover across the Indo-Pacific region, focusing on Southwest Pacific region. France French Navy, Royal Navy aircraft carrier Queen Elizabeth with Netherlands Navy frigate, and German Navy ship will visit our region. They all advocate a rule-based maritime order and agree on the spirit of our free and open Indo-Pacific vision. So I expect many collaborative opportunities with friend and partner navies later this year. As the international community faces a time of significant change, cooperation among navies based on mutual trust is strongly needed. So despite COVID-19, the JMSDF will continue to work with friends and partners to realize a free and open Indo-Pacific. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Admiral. I think you underlined the point that there are very high levels of naval activity in the Pacific, in the Indo-Pacific at the moment. Thank you. Our next speaker is Admiral Reza from Malaysia. So when you're ready, sir, off you go.
Thank you, Professor Till, Your Excellencies, esteemed panelists, distinguished guests, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum and a good afternoon. First and foremost, I wish to express my sincere appreciation to my friend Admiral Aaron Beng for inviting and facilitating my participation through this virtual platform. I'm also honored to have been invited as one of the panelists in this prestigious conference. I look forward to such opportunities to share and learn from each other's experiences and perspectives. Ladies and gentlemen, mindful of the time, I will share some perspectives on the topic of maritime in the new normal. I will begin by introducing how the pandemic has affected Malaysia as a whole and the RMN in particular. Subsequently, I will share Malaysia's initiative on maritime security cooperation at national level by providing an overview of the formation of what is called the National Task Force, its challenges, and key success factors. Following that, I will share my propositions on further enhancing regional maritime security cooperation for your consideration before I conclude my presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, after more than a year into the COVID-19 pandemic, many countries are still struggling to contain and control it. This is on top of dealing with the ensuing economic, social, and political impacts it has incurred. Malaysia, as you may already know, has not been spared. The Malaysian government has taken multiple approaches in implementing pandemic control measures while reviving the socio-economic well-being of the people, which is a very fine balance strike. To this end, we have become familiar with the phrase new normal. I tend to question the meaning of this phrase. What is the new normal? Does it mean a change in the way we used to do things? Case in point, the Spanish flu pandemic in 1918 from an individual's perspective, things pretty much went back to normal when people developed immunity. From this perspective, it can perhaps be seen as merely a temporary change of the way people did things back then. From another perspective, we also know that social healthcare systems were introduced and adopted by most nations after the pandemic. It was previously non-existent. Now, fast forward 100 years later, how does this new normal brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic affect maritime security operations? At this juncture, due to the impacts of the pandemic, we increase of illegal cross-border activities. As such, we now have to put more effort into securing our sea and land borders to curb and control the spread of the virus from coming in through illegal cross-border activities. Ladies and gentlemen, in an attempt to contain the spread of COVID-19 through illegal cross-border activities, such as smuggling, sea robbery, kidnapping for ransom, and so on and so forth, the government of Malaysia established the forming of a national task force on the 6th of May 2020. This task force brought together 19 national enforcement agencies under a coalition force led by the Malaysian Armed Forces, headed by a Vice Admiral. This initiative is a step in the right direction to address the above security concerns, which in most cases are being concocted on land before execution at sea. Since the inception of the NTF, it has succeeded in coordinating the multiple enforcement agencies' efforts. Under the interagency operation, codenamed Op Benteng, NTF's focus encompasses portion of the Straits of Malacca, the South China Sea, the Sulu Sea, and our land borders. However, the success of this operation is not without its challenges. Firstly, Malaysia's long maritime and land borders, vast maritime area to cover, presence of numerous islands to dominate, and high density of shipping pose a huge challenge to manage. Secondly, interagency coordination involving 19 different agencies, all possessing their own SOPs, different concept of operations, priorities, and legal jurisdictions was indeed tedious. It took many persuasive arguments to build trust amongst agencies involved to realize the objectives of its formation. Thirdly, patrol durations had to be prolonged, more assets and manpower had to be assigned, and purposeful capabilities such as fast boats and drones had to be procured. As a result, the cost of this operation is substantially high. Despite the above challenges, I wish to highlight some of the factors which are critical to the success of our national task force. Number one, through the whole of government approach, the NTF is mandated by the National Security Council to coordinate the operation. This mandate enables NTF to utilize various government resources in order to accomplish its mission. Number two, adopting a two-pronged strategy, we are fully cognizant that illegal cross-border activities originate from the land, acted upon at or through the sea, and eventually ends back on land. Therefore, security operations for both domains are done concurrently. Number three, pooling and sharing of resources. Resources belonging to the 19 agencies, as mentioned, provided the NTF with more tools to work with. This allows for a better coordination and control of activities within a given area. Additionally, the government's funding for this operation is being channeled to the NTF for optimal use. Number 4, command and control. Regular command committee meetings involving all 19 agencies provided the commanders with greater opportunity to align their efforts towards achieving the desired end state. Additionally, at the NTF headquarters, active roles played by representatives from all agencies facilitated a smoother coordination of the operation. Number 5, NTF's information sharing platform, of intelligence to the on-scene commanders. This, in turn, facilitated effective and appropriate actions to be undertaken by the commander on the ground. Number 6, the formulation of a common SOP enables all the agencies concerned to work better as a team. And finally, application of the whole of society approach, whereby the public is made aware of the threats caused by illegal cross-border activities and how they can assist the authorities. The number of apprehensions resulting from the reports received from the public thus far is very encouraging. There are, of course, other critical factors that contributed to the success of NTF. However, the factors just mentioned, gentlemen, in a nutshell, that summarizes the Maritime Security Cooperation at the national level in the new normal. From the regional perspective, I do not doubt that the existing regional maritime security arrangements, such as Malacca Straits Patrol, Trilateral Maritime Patrol, and Information Fusion Center, will continue to be relevant. However, the new normal brought about by the pandemic may require us to revisit our approach. Taking the model of NTF, it is worthwhile exploring the involvement of multiple enforcement agencies into existing regional arrangements. Having said that, I truly understand that our national priorities may differ. Therefore, it may take to be realized. Meanwhile, I would recommend that each littoral state adapt the joint interagency approach described earlier. It is somewhat similar to the MSTF of Singapore, TICE, MECC, and JPSCC of the Philippines, perhaps with greater efforts to tackle the source of illegal activities on land. In this new normal, coordination at all levels is crucial in order to enhance the effectiveness of our collective efforts. Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, once again, I would posit that we are in a temporary or transitional phase. The situation is evolving and we are still adapting and adjusting to the changes. There are many uncertainties lies ahead. Therefore, we have to be persistent and continue to explore new ways to improve the way we do our maritime security business. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I end my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Admiral. That was a very timely reminder of the fact that when one is dealing with threats to maritime security, coordination and cooperation within countries is very important and often very difficult too. Now, I'm going to take the privilege of being the moderator of asking the first question. I just can't resist it. I think it's pretty clear that no one country or navy can fix things all on its own, however powerful it is. So multinational naval cooperation has to be high on the priority list. And that raises the issue, really, of what kind of cooperation we out and how it's best advanced. Now, the four speakers that we've heard, excellent talks, have in some ways faced similar situations, in some ways faced different situations. And I'd like to ask them, please, in the order in which they spoke, so Admiral Gilday first, if you don't mind, can I ask what you think would be the most important kind of cooperation that you think your Navy should prepare for, and how do you plan to do it? So, Admiral Gilday, perhaps you could start the ball rolling?
I think our first aim point is interoperability with a longer-term goal of interchangeability across a wide range of nations. Each of them bring a different skill set or set of skills to the table, and we kind of knit those together in a way where it has the real say on how it happens. But I think that we come together, particularly in the Indo-Pacific. There are a range of different security frameworks, some of them bilateral, some of them trilateral, some of them the Quad, some of them multilateral, and you just have to take advantage of each of those. And so I think to some degree, you don't want to get seduced into overthinking the framework, I think is one thought I would offer. And the second question was, I think I perhaps touched on both of them in terms of the how as well.
Yeah, thank you, Admiral. Admiral Vondier.
Yes, I would say it links the issue links in several layers. The first thing to share is share a common vision and concepts, and so it's what we do today, what we do in bilateral forums and with diplomats. The second layer is to experiment interoperability. So basically, it's move and operate area together. Then the third layer is to engage together. So it's to find ranges, to find operations we can do together. So it comes from basic to high-stand missions. And four, it's to develop common tools. One of them, which is the most important, is information exchanges. It's what we do with the information centers, but we have bilateral agreements or multilateral agreements for information exchanges. And then we can develop common tools through equipment programs that we share, and it goes back to shared concepts, because if we have the same equipments, we can share the same concepts. And so it's all these comprehensive programs that we develop with our partners.
Yes, thank you very much, Admiral. Admiral Yamamura.
In my speech, I mentioned about the to dispatch the vehicle and have as many as chance of the exercises. But in the case of the vehicle level, we are planning to conducting the so-called basic exercise first. Then next to the another exercise is a HADR kind of the exercise. But not only totally the HADR, then go up to some tactical exercises. But not only a vehicle oriented, but the personnel. And the personnel is I mentioned about maritime staff college. We have a seminar or some accepting exchange student. Plus, we are planning to some capacity cooperation, such kind of the seminar of HADR or some 潜水学って何て言うんだっけ? Diverse medicine. etc., etc.
Yes.
So the vehicles, and also the personnel. That's all.
Thank you very much, Admiral. Thank you. Admiral Reza, I think in a sense you probably already feel you've answered the question, but I don't know if you want to say anything else.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Till. In a nutshell, what I said in my presentation, your question is what kind of cooperation and how to do it. Perhaps I can repeat what I said. From the national level, we propose that, especially for small countries, where our resources are limited, it is worth looking at going into the joint interagency approach. All my points are there. I don't think I want to repeat what I said in my presentation. And at the regional or bilateral level, as mentioned by Admiral Gilday, they do not overthink it. The existing mechanisms are there. The TMP, Malacca States Patrol, IFC is there. Make use of what is already in existence. At the most we can do is try to improve on it rather than try to invent something new. That's my take on that, Professor Thiel. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. A quick follow-up, really, and this is in a way a bit of an amalgam of some of the questions that I can see coming in on the chat. How should navies and how do your navies try to balance between preparing for cooperation on the one hand and to a certain extent for competition on the other? And do you think there's a shift going on from cooperation to competition because of the tensions that several of you have referred to already? So just this last round before I hand over briefly to Admiral Beng, could I ask Admiral Gilday to comment on that first of all?
Yeah, I think it goes back to your opening question at the beginning of your introductory remarks when you ask, what are we cooperating about? And I think it really is the vision of a free and open Indo-Pacific, but the question is, how do you define that? So in terms of free, I would offer, in one sense, it's traditional security. And so that is to say, free of coercion from other nations. The free to your sovereignty and your choice of who to partner with and who to trade with, as an example. Another piece of freedom has to do with values and the fact that free societies respect individual rights and liberties. And then with respect to openness, that's more of a physical aspect for me, I think, with respect to the ability to have unfettered access to the seas and the airspace above it for the peoples and the nations and the economies that benefit from it. And so I think that really is, that's what we're really competing about, right? We're competing about that vision, that idea that yields prosperity for billions.
To a certain extent, it's a function also of the degree to which navies have responsibility for maritime security in their own country. I know that France has a very distinctive model that many people admire. Admiral Bondier, where do you think the French Navy strikes the balance between cooperation and competition?
Speech is to set up a grammar. Whoever we encounter at sea, we need to be sure that we understand ourselves, that what we do signifies something which is comprehensible by the other party. And so when you train, when you encounter, that builds this grammar. And so I think this kind of forum we have today and preparing the exercises, monitoring exercises from others, builds up this comprehension, and so it's something which is reducing the probability of miscalculations. And so I think it's the most important thing in this area, is to set up all this comprehensive, all this comprehension between the nations, even though we are in a competition.
Yes, thank you. Admiral Yamamura, would you like to say something?
I think competition is not Navy. Competition must be a national level, I think. So, as a Navy level, only a cooperation exists. I believe. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Admiral Reza.
Professor Till, I would like to, I will attempt to contextualize things within the COVID-19 new normal. Within that context, you mentioned about preparing for cooperation versus competition. In the when we started off the national task force, obviously there was competition among the 19 agencies involved.
Yes.
And I should have mentioned one of the critical success factors in making the NTF work was leadership. It took a lot of engagement and encouragement to get all the 19 agencies to agree to work together. And then finally, we managed to reduce, we did not eliminate, but reduce the so-called interagency friction. And speaking of competition, of course, in our experience as well, some agencies were seen to be in competition with another agency. And once again, the leadership, in this case, our Vice Admiral, I think our Vice Admiral did a good job in managing that particular area. That's all I have on that issue, Professor Thiel. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Admiral Beng, is there anything that you would like to introduce from where you are, from the people that are in front of you?
Yeah, thanks, Professor Till. Okay, there's a call out for questions or comments from the floor here. I know Professor Till is very eager, so if there's silence for more than 3 seconds, he's going to take the mic back. So please,
You're right. You're right.
don't shy away if there are any questions. Okay, I haven't seen any hands shoot up, Professor, but let me put one question before I hand the mic back to you. And this is a question to Admiral Gilday and Admiral Vondier. In your speeches, you outlined, I think, why the Indo-Pacific is important to you. And you outlined, I think, what your view is of how you would partner the countries within the Indo-Pacific. I think the question I have for you is, what kind of response do you desire? I know that a simple way to say it is you will be flexible and you will take whatever it has and you will match the partners. And I think that's a perfectly fair response. But if you did have a chance to kind of outline how you wanted the countries to respond and reciprocate in order to make that future partnership more meaningful and successful, what would some of those facets be?
Yeah, so for me, I would highlight a couple of areas. I think that in those physical areas of the seas that are contested, particularly where smaller nations that may not have let's say a powerful navy or enable themselves to really stand up for themselves and their economies and their people, that I would hope that we could come together in a way to help them in the name of enforcing, as I mentioned before, a free and open Indo-Pacific. And so it's not necessarily provoking any particular country or calling out any particular country, but it's for the sake of everybody enforcing the rules and the laws, and doing that particularly to help those that may not be able to help themselves. I think we should endeavor to do that, and we should endeavor to do it in a way that's meaningful.
Thank you. Admiral Vondier?
So in response to the question, I think I see three axes. The first one is to develop an extensive comparison of your vision on the problems. And so the discussion we had today were very interesting in that point, because our governments are in Europe, we don't have exactly the same vision as yours. You are confronted each day to problems we do not have each day for us, despite the fact we are living in the Indo-Pacific. Can help us to share this vision. The second point is to share information and develop a common awareness. So it's what you do with the ESC, and so I think these are very good tools, and the development of these tools to be able to put lights in the dark, especially for smuggling, illegal fishing, and so understand what kind of disputes may occur, and so how we can bring people to the table to discuss it. And then it's developing forums where we can solve together the problems we have or we will have in the global commons. And so it's what I said in my speech, especially the problems which are developed around the global warming, climate change, and biodiversity, which concerns each of us, and so we may find solutions together.
Thank you. Professor Till, I think we have a couple more minutes. Back to you to finish up the session.
Okay, thank you very much, Admiral. I'm afraid we are running out of time, but I cannot resist a question, which is a combination of two questions that are in the chat, and they both relate to the First Fleet. I know that a few months ago there was a lot of talk in Washington about the possible reconstitution of the First Fleet. Where has that got to? And one of the questioners was, is there any possibility of turning that into a kind of multinational First Fleet, a bit like the CMFs, I suppose, that run out of Bahrain? Admiral Gilday?
I think to the latter point, I think as we have our new Pacific Fleet Commander, Admiral Papara, who just came from Fifth Fleet in Bahrain, and also our new Indo-PACOM commander also preceded him as in command of Fifth Fleet. That coalition maritime concept is very, very powerful. And those are 34 nations, 34 navies that form a coalition of the willing to attack common view towards common maritime security problem. So I do think that's a potential. The way the United States Navy fleets are set up, the way our architecture is set up, is our fleets don't necessarily have to be tied to specific geography. And so we could use Third Fleet out of San Diego, or we could use Fifth Fleet out of Bahrain to operate anywhere we needed them to. They're expeditionary, they're mobile. And so I'm not necessarily tied to establishing a new fleet, but rather using the resources that we have, perhaps in more innovative ways.
So it's more of an issue of command systems rather than numbers of ships, you mean?
Yes. So it's being a bit more flexible. It's not self-limiting with respect to geography in terms of how you think about the use of fleets or the use of platforms, because as at least in the United States National Defense Strategy, we talk about problem sets, and there are 5 of them that we're really cited on, but they're trans-regional. And so I think that's the way you have to think. The what navies bring to bear is their inherent mobility. To seize that, and you have to expand upon it.
Thank you, Admiral. I'm afraid that I have to disappoint all of the people who've been sending in loads of questions, actually. We just run out of time. I think just to quickly wrap the session up, I think what we've heard, in fact, through the day really, is that we have our differences, of course. It would be silly to deny that, but we have things in common as well. Something that COVID and the climate crisis have reminded us of if we needed it. In both cases, it's the question of if everyone isn't safe, no one is. And that's one incentive for pragmatic cooperation. Another is the fact that no one has the resources to fix things on their own. Cooperation is necessary, but it's clearly not going to be easy. And any assumption that somehow it will be, I think, is quite clearly wrong. The more we address the issue honestly, the better chance we have of making the progress that we need. And I think what we've heard in this panel from the four really, really good talks, I thought, was honest discussion, honest identification of what the issues are. And I think that's helped us progress along. So on behalf of everybody, the RSIS and the Republic of Singapore Navy, I'd like to thank you all the questioners. And again, I apologize to those whose questions didn't get through. But thank you very much indeed. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, sirs.